Alabama is throwing a predictable hissy fit on being left out of the college football playoff. And there's a point that they raise in here, but I think we need to unpack what it means for Alabama to be left out of the playoff and how the conference championships have kind of muddied the waters and made their argument just a little bit more palatable while also cry more Bama. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, please hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, like this video so you don't miss any of the segments we do on this show. We do lots of reaction to news, we do lots of reaction to games, and we try to be out in front when it comes to previewing the games to come. For instance, we have early looks at Texas Clemson, we have an early look at Ohio State Tennessee, and we have an early look at Colorado versus BYU, and that's just since Sunday. One of the other reactions that we did was the news that Southern Methodist had punched their ticket to the college football playoff despite what we felt like was a weaker schedule and with an Alabama team that's got wins against ranked opponents and had more or less shown itself to be one of the 15 best teams in the sport for quite some time. But as with all things, especially this season, it's Alabama's own undoing that got them here, okay? Wisconsin wasn't very good. You're unlucky on that. South Florida's not very good. You're unlucky on that. But despite all of that, you ended up being the #1 team in the country after you upset Georgia. And then you went ahead and became the first #1 ranked team in the history of the sport to lose to Alabama as a #1 team. Or excuse me, to lose to Vanderbilt as a #1 team. It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. Nobody loses to Vanderbilt being the #1 team on the road or not on the road, okay? Then you have the misfortune of Vanderbilt going from being a top 25 team to a 6-6 team. Great for Vanderbilt, bad for you. And then last, you had an opportunity to make the SEC championship game. All you had to do was win out. Instead, as a 3-touchdown favorite, you traveled to Norman and you got embarrassed by a team that finishes 6-6 and will play in the Armed Forces Bowl against Navy, has a starting quarterback go into the portal, and had already fired its offensive coordinator before you even arrived. Was mostly just playing for pride at this point and trying to keep the bowl streak alive with LSU coming on. Then you have that great win against LSU, and LSU has a win against Oklahoma. Wasn't that good. Wasn't good enough. To which we have Greg Byrne coming out saying we're really going to have to look at how we schedule going in the future if it seems that this college football playoff selection committee is not going to value strength of schedule and is not going to overvalue an 11-win team like Boise State or an 11-win team like SMU and undervalue what it means to play in the toughest league in the sport, and that is the SEC, which was pretty damn good this year. Everybody had a really fun time in this first year of the 12-team playoff, especially with the new conferences coming online at the same time. I think that there's something to this. I think if you're Alabama, you were expecting to get the SEC bump that, frankly, you got last year. You had a Florida State team that was left out of the 4-team playoff because they had a bad quarterback. They say lost the quarterback, but if you had a good quarterback behind him, you'd have still made the college football playoff. But the SEC champion was more valuable than the ACC champion. That's why you got in. You were the SEC champion, and you beat Georgia in a game that Texas couldn't win this year. Georgia won the SEC championship. And by the way, if Georgia doesn't win the SEC championship, they might not make the college football playoff with the losses that they had sustained too. Ole Miss being one of those coming to Alabama. And then the best win they had being, frankly, that team that they beat that was Alabama, or excuse me, not Alabama, that Texas, that they beat Texas twice in a row. That was a better win than anything you got because of what Georgia did later on in the season, right? And then you get to add that Georgia's got the good fortune of Clemson being good, right? In the way that you had the misfortune of Wisconsin being bad. Georgia beats up on a Clemson team that ends up winning the ACC championship. Also would not have made the college football playoff without a conference championship. So this, in a roundabout way, is where I think Alabama's got a point. But it's not the point that they raised, so I'm not going to give them credit for it. I'm going to give you this point. I think we've come to the point where we are overvaluing the conference championship game. And there's a reason why we overvalue the conference championship game. Going into this, one of the unintended consequences that we might have faced is that teams did not show up to the conference championship looking to win it because they would have known that, hey, based on merit and based on what this selection committee has done in the past, we would expect to make the college football playoff. One of those teams might be Oregon. One of those teams might be a Texas. One of those teams might be in Indiana, who didn't get to make it but was 11-1, right? Penn State, another one. They're probably going to make it with a loss anyway, especially those teams at the top of the pool here. That I don't think is going to happen because there's some pride about playing for a conference championship and nobody wants to lose that game. But I think we overvalued it. And we overvalued it because we guaranteed top seeding to the 4 highest ranked conference champions, and we guaranteed that 5 were going to get in. I think the fix for this is simple. We remove the seeding that goes along with conference championships, and we just make it an automatic qualifier. I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of pushback for the Power 4 programs getting an automatic bid for their conference champion to get in. I think the same thing is true for the highest ranked group of 5 champion. Now, the Mountain West might feel some kind of way about this, but so did the American a couple of years ago when Central Florida was left out of a national championship game. And then Cincinnati got in and they got railroaded by Bama, right? I think that they're just going to eat that. They're going to have to. You don't have enough money and you don't have enough teams that we want to watch. And this is the part where you have analysts and pundits that really want to fight with each other and not really look at college football as a business. Fact of the matter is, Ohio State versus Tennessee is a good football game. People want to watch it. It's going to be fun. Arizona State versus Boise State is not the same, right? You're going to have more people that want to watch, say, Ohio State play Georgia than want to watch Arizona State play Boise State because they know who those other 2 teams are. Boise State and Arizona State, while great stories, just do not have the gravitas and the pull. That's not worth debating, right? You know where the money is because all you got to do is look at the balance sheets and look at who sells out and look at who watches games. For instance, the most watched game on TV this year was Ohio State, Michigan. It's not Boise State, Oregon, okay? It's not even Texas A&M. It was 2 blue bloods that hate each other. Lots of stories to pull from there, and people did, right? Especially as that game got a little bit tighter down the line and it looked like Ohio State was going to lose it. More people tuned in because Michigan was not supposed to win this year, and yet they did. I think another way in which I would illustrate this is Army and Notre Dame. Army goes 11-1. They win their conference championship. Their only loss is to Notre Dame, albeit a bad loss. Meanwhile, Notre Dame goes 11-1, whose only loss is to Northern Illinois, but they don't want a conference championship, and they don't frankly need one. They got everything they wanted with this first round home game that they get to host against an Indiana team that is good. And Notre Dame really does move the needle for many because it's the billionaire that doesn't have to pay taxes. We like to treat that person a little bit differently because we tend to think that they allow so much other stuff to happen that we're just going to, forget about the taxes that we might otherwise want them to pay. I don't believe in that. I believe that if everybody else has to play for a conference championship, so should you. And I think one of the ways in which you were trying to say, hey, we're going to value these conference champions more than we're going to value Notre Dame is by doing the top seeding going to the 4 highest ranked conference champions, for which Notre Dame can never be one. And you could see now Notre Dame made the better deal, right? I think we got to revisit the rules. I think we got to take a look at just allowing that the conference champion is going to get in and go from there. Because the other way I look at this is, in what world is it fair that Texas is ranked number 3? Georgia's ranked number 2. Georgia gets the bye, but Texas has to host a home game while being seated behind number 9 Boise State and number 12 Arizona State because they won a conference championship in leagues that, let's face it, aren't as competitive as the SEC or the Big Ten for that matter. There's an argument for the ACC with SMU, but that they put SMU in this also underscores that they're valuing the conference championship games a little bit more than they should, which is why Alabama's got an argument and beef. The rescheduling part is just crying and whining. For years, the SEC has scheduled not one, but two FCS opponents each and every friggin' year. It drives us crazy to see the Mercers of the world on their program, to see the Tennessee Techs of the world on their program. We don't feel that you should be punching down that way, but if you can go get an easy win, knowing what the rest of this conference is going to be up and down, you're probably going to go do that. Now you have an Alabama that is claiming with a straight face that it's not going to schedule hard teams anymore. Good luck with that, homie. Good luck with that. Because you going 11-1 might get you into the college football playoff. But you ain't going to go 11-1 because you got to play 8-9 conference games every year. That's what's going to happen. And in a conference that is that competitive, I don't give a damn if you don't play Florida State next year. I don't give a damn if you do play Florida State next year. I'm going to judge you based on who it is you played, because the scheduling had nothing to do with Alabama not getting the playoff. Losing to 6-6 Vanderbilt, losing to 6-6 Oklahoma, and losing to Tennessee. That is what kept you out of the college football playoff. You want to get in, win. Otherwise, stop crying. Meanwhile, let's do away with the highest four conference champions getting that first round bid, and let's just seed them based on who we know is good.